Sun Wukong is the legendary protagonist of the 16th century Chinese novel Journey to the West. He's a god-tier monkey king and a warrior who can leap across the sky and shift into 72 different forms. But unlike other mythic figures, Wukong began his journey as a mortal slave to his own impulses. He was reckless, impulsive, and his own worst enemy. His transformations from a rebellious monster into an enlightened master is a psychological blueprint for every man who feels like a victim of his own talent. The man who is ambitious but lazy, talented but distracted. Most of us live like the early Wukong. We all have an inner unruly monkey, that part of your brain that craves distraction, avoids work, and chases cheap dopamine. We have the gifts, but this monkey keeps us trapped in a cycle of aimless impulse and keeps us stuck or invisible despite our potential. The problem is that we're fighting the world when we should be mastering that monkey. So in this video, we're going to look at how to discipline your inner unruly monkey through the philosophy of Sun Wukong. Number 1. The discovery of mortality. Wukong's origins begin with a cosmic anomaly, a stone which sat atop the mountain of flowers and fruit. For eons, this stone soaked up the chi, or life force, of the sun and the moon. One day, the stone split open with a sound like thunder, and out leaped a monkey. When he first opened his eyes, 2 beams of golden light shot from his pupils, piercing the clouds and startling the Jade Emperor in the Celestial Palace. But despite this supernatural beginning, Wukong started as an animal. He spent his early years living purely by instinct, eating, sleeping, and running with the tribe. He was highly capable, but he was only living entirely for the moment. The shift happened when the monkey tribe faced a massive, thundering waterfall that no one dared to cross. They made a deal. Whoever was brave enough to jump through the water and find its source would be named king. While others calculated the risk, Wukong simply leaped. He threw himself into the torrent and discovered a hidden, fully furnished paradise on the other side. By crossing that barrier, Wukong stopped being just another member of the tribe. He became the handsome Monkey King. For the next 300 years, he had everything: status, safety, and endless pleasure. But during a celebration, the music stopped, and Wukong began to weep. He realized that no matter how much fruit he ate or how many subjects he ruled, eventually he would die, and his kingdom would turn to dust. That grief was the moment he stopped being an animal and became a seeker. Most of us spend our lives as stone monkeys. We're a product of our environment, social conditioning, and basic biology, so we live in a state of pure instinct. We work for the weekend, we chase cheap dopamine and instant gratification, and we avoid any risk that feels like the waterfall. The waterfall represents the leap of faith. It's the first step you take when you leave your comfort zone. Say, starting a business, stepping on a stage, or deciding to live by your own rules instead of the tribe's. Now, some of us actually do jump through the waterfall. We get the king status, the high-paying job, the title, the nice car, and they stop there. We think they've won the game, and that's the trap. Don't just aim to jump through the waterfall and get the promotion or the car. Aim to be the seeker. Wukong's tears represent the haunting realization that success, in the eyes of the world, doesn't solve the problem of your own mortality or the lack of meaning in your soul. If you feel a deep, burning emptiness, despite your achievements, don't ignore it, because that is your awakening. Number 2. The arrogance of skill. Driven by the fear of death, Wukong abandoned his kingdom. He spent years searching for a master until he found a Taoist sage who taught him the hard skills of the universe. He didn't just learn to meditate, he mastered the 72 transformations, giving him the cognitive flexibility to shift his shape into anything to survive. He mastered the cloud somersault, a technique that allowed him to travel vast distances in a single leap. But he didn't stop at skills. He needed leverage. Skill alone makes you capable, yes, but leverage makes you dangerous. He dove into the underwater palace of the Dragon King and borrowed Rui Jingu Bang, an iron pillar weighing over 17,000 pounds. But this was no mere weapon. It was telepathic, shrinking to the size of a needle behind his ear or growing to pierce the clouds. And with these powers, Wukong's ego reached critical mass. When the spirits of the underworld eventually came to collect his soul, he didn't submit. He fought back and effectively hacked the system of life and death by erasing his name from the ledger of the dead. He then demanded a title worthy of his genius, the Great Sage, equal to heaven. He wasn't content being a king, he wanted to be a god. He mocked the divine institutions, stole the wine of the heavens, and declared that he was the only authority that mattered. Wukong believed that because he was more capable than others, he was more important than the order of the universe. In our life, this is a stage where you've taken a leap of faith and have acquired your skills and your social and financial leverage. But this phase contains a hidden poison: arrogance. You've become a high performer with no moral compass. You care more about the status, the title of a CEO, a founder, than the actual value you provide to others. You believe that the rules of ethics don't apply to you because you're special. You become a chaos agent. And as Wukong would soon find out, the universe has a very specific way of dealing with chaos agents who think they're equal to heaven. Number 3. The Great Humbling. Wukong had now defeated the armies of heaven. He was drunk on his own power, standing in the middle of the celestial palace, demanding the throne of the universe. He believed there was nowhere he couldn't go and no one who could stop him. But that is when the Buddha appeared and offered him a simple challenge. He held out his palm and said, "If you are as great as you say, leap off the palm of my hand. If you succeed, I will give you the throne. If you fail, you must return to Earth and do penance." He leapt with all his might, flying through the clouds for what felt like hours until he reached the very edge of the universe. And when he got there, he saw 5 pink pillars piercing the sky. To prove he'd been there, he urinated at the base of the middle pillar and wrote his name on it. The Great Sage, equal to heaven, was here. He flew back, landing triumphantly in Buddha's palm. "I did it!" he boasted. "Now give me the throne." The Buddha lowered his hand. Wukong looked down. On the base of Buddha's middle finger was the writing, and between the fingers was the faint smell of urine. Wukong had never left Buddha's hand. The pillars at the end of the universe were just the Buddha's fingers. Before Wukong could even gasp, the Buddha flipped his hand over. The 5 fingers transformed into the 5 elements mountain: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. It slammed down on Wukong, pinning him to the ground. He was trapped under the weight of the entire world, with only his head and hands exposed. And he would remain there, fed only molten copper and iron pills for 500 years. For a modern man, the 5 Elements Mountain is the moment life proves you aren't as smart, fast, or untouchable as you thought. The business that was too big to fail goes bankrupt. The invincible athlete suffers a career-ending injury. The influencer who loses their entire following over a single post. When you're stuck in a period of your life where nothing is moving, no matter how hard you push, it could be because the universe is trying to break your ego. So if you're under the mountain right now, stop trying to dig your way out with the same arrogance that got you there. Number 4. The diet of molten copper. Under the 5 Elements Mountain, Wukong was subjected to a brutal biological retraining. The Buddha appointed local earth spirits to care for the prisoner, but their care was terrifying. Whenever Wukong was thirsty, they poured molten copper down his throat. Whenever he was hungry, they fed him pellets of rusted iron. For 500 years, the palate of a god, once accustomed to the peaches of immortality, the jade wine of the heavens, and the royal banquets of his kingdom, was replaced by the taste of raw, searing metal. There was no sweetness. There was no variety. There was only the heavy, bitter weight of the earth. The diet of copper and iron represents the psychological state of doing what's necessary when it provides zero high. The copper represents the heat of the struggle, whereas the iron represents the weight of the boredom. When Wukong was forced to live on these elements, his body didn't die, it transmuted. He learned the most difficult lesson in self-mastery: how to function in the absence of excitement. We all must survive this copper and iron phase. We must build the discipline to do the work when there is zero applause and zero dopamine. Wukong didn't want the copper or iron, but he drank it to survive. This is the phase where an athlete trains alone. No PRs, no praise, just showing up to lift the same weight every day. It's the founder working in silence long after the excitement fades, fixing problems that no one sees. If you can learn to survive on iron and copper, on hard work and silence, the world can never tempt you or break you. Number 5. The death of the great sage. For the first 100 years under the Five Elements Mountain, Wukong screamed. He used his 72 transformations to try and swell his body to crack the stone. He used his godlike strength to heave against the weight. He cursed the Buddha and the heavens until his voice was raw. But after 3 centuries, the screaming stopped. Wukong stopped being the great sage equal to heaven and became a part of the mountain itself. He had to face the most terrifying truth an immortal can face. The universe didn't care about his ego. The mountain didn't care about his titles, his past victories, or his divine right to rule. This is the waiting room of life. It's the period where you're stuck in a situation you can't hustle your way out of. You try every trick, every hack, every connection, but the door remains shut. This phase is designed to kill the false self, the version of you that lives for the win and the image. It's the death of the stone monkey who thinks he's the center of the story. So when Wukong stopped fighting the mountain, he wasn't giving up. He was accepting. Real change only begins when you stop fighting your reality and start owning it. Most of us waste our years resenting our circumstances, blaming our boss, our ex, our luck, and so on. We're like Wukong in the 1st century, screaming at the mountain that isn't listening. So if you're in a period of stagnation, realize that the mountain is actually a mirror. The more you fight, the more it crushes you. Accept your position so you can finally begin to work within it. Also, you may want to audit your friends. When Wukong was a king, he had thousands of brothers. When he was under the mountain, he had 0. No one came to his rescue. High performance draws a crowd. Rock bottom draws a vacuum. Notice who remains. Wukong eventually realized that the Buddha's hand was only heavy because Wukong's ego was so large. When you shrink your ego, the weight of the world becomes manageable. You can't be released from your current prison until you are no longer the person who deserved to be put there. Number 6. The discipline of mission. After 500 years of silence, Wukong was finally approached by the goddess Guanyin, the goddess of mercy who watches over the world's suffering. She offered him a deal. He'd be freed from the mountain, but he couldn't return to his kingdom to be a king. Instead, he had to serve as a bodyguard for a humble monk named Tang Sanzang, a monk sent by the emperor to bring sacred wisdom back to the people on a perilous 10,000-mile journey to the west. But there was a catch. The gods knew Wukong's nature. They knew that the moment he was free, his monkey mind might take over again. So Guanyin gave the monk a gift, the golden fillet. This was a metal band that sat around Wukong's head, hidden under a cap. Whenever he acted on impulse or became violent or arrogant, The monk would chant a tightening spell, and the band would crush Wukong's skull with agonizing pain. For the first time in his life, Wukong's power was constrained. He had the strength to kill demons, but he had to use it to serve a man who was physically weaker than him. In the modern world, the golden fillet is the set of rules you voluntarily place on your own life to keep your power from becoming destructive. The monk is your mission. It's your family, your legacy, or your life's work. Notice that the monk is physically weak, but spiritually focused compared to your loud ego, which gives your power a direction. The fillet is your standard. It's the 5 a.m. alarm, the strict diet, or the deep work session. These aren't cages, they're harnesses that turn a chaotic monkey into a focused warrior. When you start a new path of discipline, the tightening spell is real. It's the literal psychological pain of saying no to a craving or yes to a difficult task. Wukong often wanted to fly away and leave the monk behind. In modern life, this would be your urge to quit or look for distractions when things get too tough or too boring. When the monk chants, Wukong's head feels like it will split. This is the friction you feel when you force your unruly mind to sit still and finish the work. If you don't choose your fillet, life will give you another mountain. Number 7. The Victorious Fighting Buddha. After 14 years of walking and many life-threatening trials, Wukong and the monk finally reached the Western Heaven. They stood before the Buddha and received the sacred scriptures they'd bled for. Wukong had saved the monk's life countless times, not out of fear of the golden fillet, but out of genuine devotion to the mission. As they prepared to return home, Wukong turned to the monk and said, "Master, the journey is over. Please chant the spell to loosen the fillet and take it off my head. I've served my time." The monk smiled and looked at him. "Look for yourself, Wukong. Is it still there?" Wukong reached up to his forehead. He felt for the cold metal that had governed his life for over a decade, but his fingers felt only his own skin. The golden fillet had vanished. It hadn't been removed by a key or a spell. It had simply ceased to exist the moment Wukong no longer needed to be controlled. He was granted the title of the Victorious Fighting Buddha because life is always a struggle. The only difference is that he's no longer at war with himself. For the first time, Wukong's power is perfectly aligned with his wisdom. He no longer needs the fillet, the external rules, because he's developed internal control. The external rules of discipline, the fillet, only disappear when you stop resisting them. If you still have to force yourself to work out, stay honest, or remain productive, you still need those rules. And when you've reached the final stage, when you no longer need a habit tracker or an alarm to do the work, you do it because it's who you are. When your character is unshakable, you don't need outside pressure or hacks to keep you on track. You don't try to be disciplined, you simply are disciplined. Ultimately, the goal is to be a fighting Buddha, someone who's dangerous and capable, but has total control over their power. The journey of discipline isn't about the prize at the end. It's about building the character necessary to handle the weight of life. So be a fighting Buddha. And that's our video. What did you think? What lessons did Wukong learn that you want to apply most in your own life? Let me know in the comments below. But until then, I've been Dan, you've been awesome, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to check out our full Philosophies for Life playlist. And for more videos to help you find success and happiness using beautiful philosophical wisdom, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching.